And every time you figure something out and every time it's really, really hard, you know that on the other side, it's not going to be for that. And it'll never stop. Like there's never going to be a time. It's going to get easier for all of us because we're all learning. And I think there's never going to be a time where you don't have to deal with issues. It may be you go weeks with none, and sometimes you do, but there's always going to be something. And it's your job, the owner, the CEO, to make that best decision that you can with the information that you have at the time.
Welcome to today's episode of Influence by Design. I'm your host, Samantha Riley, and today we're going to have a great conversation with someone that I very first met when I launched my first book 9 years ago, and we had a great conversation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've been following him along the way ever since. So today we're welcoming Brian Town to the show, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things, just so much about being the CEO of your business. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Dan, thank you so much. I was really, when I saw this come through, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really excited because I think I had you on my podcast that I need to get going again. And now I'm on your podcast. So here we are. And we're still alive and still doing stuff.
Yes, it's I was going to say the circle of life. It's the circle of podcasts, the circle of business, the circle of entrepreneurship. When I was on your podcast, and it was 9 years ago, I cannot believe it was that long ago. I just launched my first book, and I followed you for quite a while. And one of the things that I absolutely loved, and I stumbled across it, was a video that you posted, and it was your team members pulling questions out of a hat. And they were answering those questions. And it is a video that stuck with me so strongly that I've been wanting to do it with my team, because I watched that video. I mean, I haven't seen it for years, but at the time I watched it so many times because I just loved the way that your team was interacting with each other, with the questions. And I feel that it strongly sent a message about the values and the culture in your company, and that really stood out to me. What was the idea behind that video?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that video in a while. Now I want to do it with my staff today because it was just so fun. And all we were trying to do is, we're a creative agency, and we were just trying to, post some things on social media that would get some attention and really introduce our staff in a way that we felt was authentic. And it was hilarious. I mean, the people that are on there too, like it's 100% their personality. And so we really thought, all right, we want to find a way, rather than just a headshot and talking about what they like, we want to find a way that people could see, like John, for example, our web designer, when they're talking to him through email or on the ticketing system, we wanted them to know his personality because he's hilarious. And so, that's just one of the things that we did. And we did quite a bit. We even did some like office like videos that were funny. And I think that's when we had a smaller staff and we didn't have as many clients. So we had a little more extra time to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's great. I forgot all about that. That's so cool. I'm glad that you had that reaction.
Well, one of the I mean, you've got a 7-figure business now. I believe you've got a team of around 20. Have I got the number right?
Yep, that's correct.
One of the things that you talk about, or that we talk about, I guess, as business owners, is we can't build our companies on our own. We do need to have a team, or a pool of talent, people that are going to help us to take our businesses to where they need to go. And one of the things you talk about is having a hiring funnel. And I found this really interesting because we can only take our business, we've got this amazing vision, right? But we can only take our business as far as our team can support us and help us. So can you talk about this hiring funnel? Because this is super interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think it all stems from my belief that, I needed to surround myself with people that were better and smarter than I was. And, that doesn't take much, right? But
that is so not true.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, man. Some of the team members that we have now, they're just so sharp. And so I really felt that I needed to do that. Now, I still needed to be the leader and drive that, and they needed to get that inspiration from me. But I've talked about this for a long time as, for example, manufacturers, skilled trades companies, we've talked to them about their need for talent. And, we go in there, and I've been saying this for 20 years. How are you hiring for talent right now? And it's the same thing, right? They just put up a help wanted sign, or they post on Indeed. And they don't really talk about what it's like to work there. And they don't talk about like what we call their employer brand. And, really what you want to do is you really want to put your core values out there, put your manifesto, if you want to call it that, out there about what you believe in and what your company stands for. And, this all came from my first kind of year in business, where I had stopped teaching on a Friday. I had worked as an educator for 13 years and stopped teaching, and decided to start a company. And Monday morning got an office, and I was like, all right, let's go. And, a couple weeks later, I was like, oh man, what did I do? And, and still today here, 14 years later, I'm like, yeah. But, I started to look for what makes a great company, because I hadn't run a business before. I had no idea, and ran across this thing called a manifesto that was on a site that was a company called Centro at the time, out of Chicago. And it was beautiful. And it was like speaking to like the belief in how we wanted people to be, and how we wanted people to act if they worked for that company, and what our job as leaders was. And I read it, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And long story, but I contacted them, and I got to talk to the CEO, and he's like, absolutely, I would love for you to use this. And that single document was the basis of our core values. And what we found is that our core values are written in such a way that people really were like, oh my God, yes, that's what I believe in. And they're simple. They're just like,
Mm.
everyone around you should have a better day, live to create. These are the kind of things that, they don't say things like customer service or be really good at Photoshop or whatever. It's about how we we expected people to be inside and outside of work. That's the type of people that had my beliefs and our company's beliefs, who we wanted to attract. And that funnel is, rather than talking about, what the job is, how is that job going to be? What's it going to be like to work here? And also, what type of people are we looking for? And are you that person? And I think that inspirational, core values in that manifesto has helped us just attract some really, really great people. Not only are they talented, they're just really, really good people. And that's who we wanted.
I love that so much. What just the process of writing that manifesto, and I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. The process of writing that manifesto, how much did that help you personally before you even moved on to finding those employees, those team members that had the same values and beliefs?
Yeah, because for me it was everything, because and we still have it today, and we still are basically have the same core values. We added one more, but for me, it got me to think about something bigger than just a marketing company, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to have a company that could really improve the lives of people that work here. And even if it was for a little bit of time, like I always felt that I wanted to have a company that did something else besides just, create products and create marketing and do great work and websites and all that. So for me, that got me, when I was feeling like, maybe I made a mistake, I don't know what I'm doing. For me, yeah, and even today, I can go back to those core values when I'm feeling like, it was a really hard week. I can go, wait a minute, let's go back to your core values. I get called out sometimes on our core values too. And so for me, it was, I always said that if for whatever reason, if we decided to shut things down tomorrow, just having that manifesto and having the core values and having the people that have gone through here and that are still here, I think that'll stick with them. And, for me, it just got me back, it gets me back, excited about maybe I'm doing something that's bigger than myself some
Mm,
days.
mm, Yeah, right. Because it's lonely at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
top.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's something as business owners that we, don't sort of always get into the belief, oh, it's lonely at the top, I can't do this. But having the understanding that it is lonely at the top and implementing or having these ideas that can help us to get through. I know that you're writing a book at the moment, The Lonely CEO, and it just sings to me because like you, there's days where I'm like, oh my goodness, how crazy am I? Like, what am I doing this for? I've been in business 30 years and I still say that to myself, like almost every
I
week.
know.
What am I doing? But at the same time, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's a
Yeah.
bizarre roller coaster ride, isn't it? And, if
Yeah.
you talk to anyone else in business, they say the same thing. It's the hardest thing I've
They
ever
do.
done, but I wouldn't have it any other way. We're insane. We're an insane bunch, really, aren't we?
We are. We are. We talk about that all the time. My wife's a new business owner after, well, about 2 years now, but we talk about that very same thing. It's that, yes, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Why did I do this? But man, I really don't think I'd want to work for somebody else again. And just comes in waves. Sometimes you're on top of the mountain and sometimes you're, in the valley. And I think for me, over last year, about in October, I was really at the point where, and I was talking to Holly, my wife, and she was like, I don't know what's going on right now, but whatever it is, like we need to figure it out. And we came up with this great plan where I was going to shut everything down, and we were going to go down to like one person or two people, and had this reasons why to do it, because I was just stressed and things weren't working like I wanted to, and I was excited. And we had that plan in place. And then I came across this book by Stephen Pressfield called The Daily Pressfield, and it had an image in there of this character that was like, oh, I had it right here, I put it by my desk.
Oh, wow.
um so it had this character of this guy laying in bed, and it says, when does resistance wakes up with me? And I was reading this book, and it was talking about this like imposter syndrome and questioning yourself and resistance to do what you need to do, and that simple belief of that you are the one. And I think I got to this point where we all do this. We all look at all the people that we follow and all the successful, I mean, you talk to successful people all day long, and so we just assume they got it all figured out.
Mm,
And
mm,
the truth is, like you said, they're just like us. And
mm-hmm.
no one does what, like, we just think that everyone runs a business because that's all we hang out with. And in reality is no one does. And very few people are able to do it very successfully. And so for me, when I saw that, I was like, I went out and I had my headphones on, and Holly and I get up early, and she was doing her thing, and I was like, hey, I figured it out. And I was like, had my headphones off. She's like, what's going on? I go, I figured it out. It's this resistance piece that's just this lack of self-confidence all the time and sticking back into those core values like we were talking to earlier. And for me, we didn't shut the company down. And then things just started to happen. Like, decided to write the book, and that started to come together. Met a great editor, slimmed down our staffs some, and found some great resources for outsourcing. And so just that simple 5 minutes of me kind of figuring out what was going on, and that belief in myself again, I think fixed everything. Because as a CEO, like it or not, your team is looking to you to always have it all figured out,
Mm-hmm.
and to be that guiding light. And when you're down, I don't know what the percentage is, but when you're down 10%, your team feels it by 50%.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so for me, that made a big difference. Now, we didn't end up shutting down, and we ended up, actually having one of the better years that we've had. And I really believe that it was simply me just back into that mode again that I was, when I first started out. And so I
Finding
felt,
that
if I feel
joy
like that,
again.
yeah, if I feel like that, I bet other people feel like that. And I've coached a few people that have businesses, and my favorite story is she runs this really nice smoothie bar, and her husband runs a gym, and it's beautiful in there. And I was coaching her, and I was talking to her, and she's like, "Man, I feel like I'm screwing everything up, and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm all alone, and that none of this is good." I'm like, "Hold on a minute, like, look around for a second. Like, this is amazing. What do this, look at this, look at what you've done in 1 year. Like, no one does this. Like, you're the only one that could have done this." And for her that was great, but then for me it was also a good reminder. We're really good at giving advice, but sometimes
Mm.
we have to say it out loud to take it
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
I think that's the most beautiful part of coaching, is that we have such a belief in our clients, and we'll say things, and often it's a mirror coming back to us to go, yeah, see, you've
Yeah.
got this. It's
Yeah.
crazy that we've got so much belief in our clients. And my clients say to me often, like, you believe in me more than I do. But I have those moments too that you're talking about, those moments
Oh
of
yeah.
doubt, those moments like, oh my God, I've got no idea what I'm doing. How can I be doing this for 30 years and still have no clue what I'm doing? And I recently heard a story about Richard Branson being in I don't know if it was a board meeting or a pitch meeting or something where someone was talking about and asking about net profit. And whoever was retelling this story was in the room and took a look over at Richard Branson and could see his eyes glazing over. And, he was scratching at his pad, and he sort of like took him outside and went, "You've got no idea what net profit is, do you?" And Richard Branson's like, "Nah, no clue whatsoever." And that story, seriously,
Yeah.
it made me feel so much better about myself to think, God, if he didn't know and he's built these multi-million and billion-dollar companies, it's okay that I don't know some things as well. And we can find out and learn along the way. And sometimes we won't know things and it won't actually make a difference. Like, I'm all for being educated, but we can't know everything. And it's quite okay.
Well, and I think with a small entrepreneurial business, like a lot of people that we work with and talk to, like you have to be at sometimes you got to wear a lot of different hats. And
Mm,
so if in a perfect world, we would be at Branson level and we would work on, two things, the vision of the company and making sure our employees are taken care of. And that's it. And,
yeah.
those high level sales pieces, but like today, I'm all of those things, right? I'm that visionary. I'm on this podcast and trying to market. I was doing payroll before I got on this. I was sending
Mm-hmm.
invoices. And then I think I was writing some copy earlier. I mean, so, you
Yeah.
know,
Doing all
I
the
think that
things.
yeah, yeah. And ordering some toilet paper later, probably on Amazon. But I I do have some support and that really goes into that first discussion that we had too, Sam, is start to think about those things that you're not good at, that you're just awful. Like I'm terrible at project management. Like I just don't like it. I'm a creative person. It's too organized. And so I have some really, really good project managers. And once in a while I'll kind of get in there and try to do some project management and then they yell at me and then I go away. So I think, getting those people that are better than you at certain things is going to be a really, really good strategy for you because then you can start to get into what you really should be doing as that CEO. And that's hard. I
Mm,
mean, here I am 13, 14 years later and I'm still doing those things.
mm. It's the truth, right? Let's talk a
Mm.
little bit more about imposter syndrome because, you just mentioned that you can bring other people in, but there's also this really bizarre part of being a human where that sounds so simple. Yet when you're really thinking, I'm just making this up as I go along, it can also be very scary to bring those people in because you've got this fear of like, they're going to know that I'm no good and they're not going to want to work with me or want to be with me. How do you deal with this monster?
Yeah, I don't know. No. So a lot of different ways, right? Sam, I'm 51 and I'm still struggling with it from time to time. But, I talk about this in the book and my wife and I talk about it is I think I'm glad that I have it in some form or another
Mm,
at points because if I didn't, I don't think I'd work as hard because I think I'm always trying to outperform myself and I'm trying to make sure that they're not going to find out that I'm just an imposter because I'm just going to do so much that they won't even try to look.
mm,
But so I think at some points it's good. The problem is when it gets to the point where it's really starting to, maybe you don't want to get out of bed or maybe you're not wanting to do the things that you need to do because you don't think you're going to do a great job at them. And I think that happened to me back, especially, back in October, is where, if in reality, if I look around at what I've built, I had a really successful career in education. All of my four children are just, it couldn't be any better. They're just successful adults, and we still have a 9-year-old. I mean, they're just amazing. My wife has done a great job with her business. We live in a beautiful house. And at times I was like, well, it has nothing to do with me. And that's just silly. And so that moment when I told Sarah to look around at what she built, that is what I try to do for myself is just take a moment because we're always worried about what happened before and what's going to happen next or what could happen is take a moment to look at our building that we have. I bought a building 2 years ago for our company. And I mean, that's a building I own. And we've got equipment in there. And it's all stuff that because of not, because of the team and the company and my leadership, it's all stuff that we were able to do. And so
Mm.
taking that minute to just pause, and also something else that I told a younger woman that I was coaching who was brand new into business, and she had quit a job to go do it. I think she has a master's degree. And I was like, Crimson, there is no one better to do this. Right. And then, we talked about all that. And then I was like, all right, let's go worst case scenario. So here's a worst case scenario. This is as bad as it's going to get, Crimson. And she was kind of worried. And I said, well, the business won't make it. And then you'll go get a really good paying job. And that's it. That's like as
Mm.
worst case
Right.
scenario as it possibly can get. She's like, well, that's not too bad. I'm like, yeah, no, I know. It's not
I
bad at
know,
all.
but we
Or you'll
make
try
it
another
into
business.
these huge things, don't we? Of like, oh my goodness, what
Yeah.
if? And when you really look at it like that, it's like, oh, it's taking the pressure off. Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right, that's it. We can keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I have to remind myself all the time of that. And I think doing things like this, honestly, like you said, coaching makes me not only feel good because I'm giving great advice that I need to take myself, but also I'm helping someone see, like Crimson, all of a sudden, like now she's just done a great job with that simple belief that she is the one. And I think doing things like this and talking to you, I'm super passionate about this topic. And for me, like this is going to make my night. It'll make the rest of the week go really well. Just because I think doing things like this and getting out and talking about what you're passionate about and those kind of things you're able to go, well, the only way I could talk about all these things with so much passion is because I've actually done a decent job. So
Mm,
that
mm.
that's been
I
helpful.
love that you just said that last piece because I was sitting here thinking, this is such a great conversation. Like this lights me up. It makes my body feel excited. I know that I'm going to go straight from this interview into getting a whole heap of stuff done. But and it's so important to surround ourselves with the right people and bring these topics up, like not lift up the carpet and push them under there and keep them in the dark, but actually talk about them to realize it's not just me. This is actually just normal. And having conversation with really smart people that understand the journey, it's just, just knowing that there's someone else there that feels like us. It's like, oh, not only do we feel better about ourselves, but now we're energized to go forward even more.
Yeah, and I think for me, like I'm getting the chills just that because just that something like, yeah, I look at where I was before in my first career and I loved it, but I was a teacher, so we didn't have these connections. Like I would have never met you. I would have never met, any of the clients. I've been in some, Fortune 500 CEOs talking to them. Like none of that would have happened if I didn't take that leap. And I think one of my coaches told me that, and this is I have to remember too to tell myself, is that when it feels really, really, really hard, you're close.
Hmm.
You're close to figuring it out. And I was like, okay, well, I must be really close to a lot of things. He's like, no, no, no. But he's like, yeah, he's like, but you're
Right?
close. He's like, you're right on that edge. And it's those struggles that I think, and my wife really, she's a new business owner and she's brilliant. And she really said it beautifully and kind of made me think about those hard times. And she's only been doing it for about 2 years, but she's been really successful. And the way that she put it is she's like, I thought I'd start this business and it would just be awesome and things would just work out and we'd just run this business, we'd see patients and things would be great. And then she hired another employee and then she hired a couple more and then she bought a building and they got busy and then things just started to happen, normal things, nothing serious. The
Mm,
basement kind of flooded. One employee they thought was great wasn't great. So it's just these things that come up. And she's like, I at first I was like, oh my God, are these just going to be problems all day long? And then she kind of was like, they're just things that we have to figure out. And every time we figure one out, there's going to be another one. But we figured that piece out so that that's probably not going to happen again. And they're just issues, I think she said, and they're just things that we have to figure out. And every time you figure something out, and every time it's really, really hard, that on the other side, it's not going to be for that. And it'll
mm,
never stop. Like there's never going to be a time, it's going to get easier for all of us because we're all learning. And I think there's never going to be a time where you don't have to deal with issues. It may be you go weeks with none, and sometimes you do, but there's always going to be something, and it's your job the owner, the CEO, to make that best decision that you can with the information that you have at the time.
I love that. Your wife sounds super duper smart. I think it's
Yes.
very, very easy to let those things get on top of you when you're not in a good headspace, where you're having a bad day or you've had a whole heap of things go wrong. It can be very easy to get into a downward spiral at those times and just be like, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Just recently, earlier this year, I took on a project and I just said to my husband, I'm going to not get overwhelmed because I could get overwhelmed really easily. It's a new project, so there's a million new things. And I said, I'm going to take on this project as an experiment and not going to overwhelm ever. And just pre-framing the project with that thought, I got through it where every time I thought, oh, I was like, yeah, but you're not overwhelmed. Just what do you need to do next? And I can tell you, I have never done a project ever and had it go so simply from a personal perspective. Let me tell you,
Right.
if the amount of things that could have gone wrong did, like we had to, at one point, there was a whole piece of software that didn't work. We'd spent weeks putting this whole thing together. And then on 3 days' notice, we had to completely rebuild it out again. There was a moment where I went, and I went, no, take a breath.
Yep.
We're just going to get it done. And it was a brilliant experiment for me just to prove how much our mindset and the way that we choose to be in a moment can affect our business so much. And I can't believe it took me all that time to do that experiment. I wish I had have done that 25 years ago, right?
Yeah, and I always say that too. I'm like, God, if I would have, done it this way a long time ago, but I didn't have the information that I'd never done
Yeah.
anything like this. Like I could have never written this book without all, 13 years of sweat and tears. And I think, we're making the best decision that we possibly can make at that time. And, there's no one else that can make the decision. And so for me, I think you're right. You were talking earlier about that downward spiral, and my wife knows, and she knows me better than anyone. And when I'm not feeling great about the business, I start thinking about other things like, oh, I should have
Yeah.
spent more time reading with Cora last night. Or, oh, why haven't the boys called me yet? It's like I sound like an old grandma, and she's like, why do you do that? Like, and it's just that reframing. And again, taking that moment to be present in now. And, I've read a lot of books on that. And is, at any given moment, the only time that really matters is right now.
Hmm.
I mean, there's absolutely nothing else you can control, besides how you're feeling right now. And for me, sticking with a morning routine, making sure that when I'm feeling, a certain way about the business, that I'm not letting that take me down. And then just having open and honest conversations with each other. And we're pretty good at reading the room. Like so far, like, thank goodness, both of us aren't in a real bad spot at the same time, because I don't know what would happen then. But, we're able to bring each other up, and she just kind of walks me off the ledge, and then I do the same thing with her, and everything's fine.
It's interesting that you say that because my husband, Leon, and I have said the same thing. We always seem to be dipping at different times. And I'm going to say that there's something greater out there, and I know there is anyway, that supports us to do that because I notice when he dips, it's when I'm at a super high and I'm able to go, hey, look, like, I'm in this great place and there's another way. And, I can bring him back. And the same thing with me. It always seems that I do my really big deep dives when he's in a really good place. I think that it happens for a reason because you wouldn't want to dip at the same time. That could be really
No.
bad. But it's,
Yeah.
having gratitude for, for these people around us that help us do that, whether it's our spouse or whether it's a business bestie or, whoever it is. We need to have that person there that's that sounding board that we can be open and honest with. And that needs to be someone that's in a sacred circle with us. That can't be just
Yeah.
anyone. Someone that really knows us, that we can have the trust to know and the safety that we can say the real truth of how we're feeling without being afraid that it will be thrown back in our face. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's why I named the book that, is just because, at the top, I don't feel like I'm at the top, but, you know, you are kind of alone because you can't really share your fears and worries with your staff. And, you have to be that inspirational leader at all times when you can. You can't really share, your fears and worries necessarily with your friends, especially if they don't run a business, because they don't get it and they
Mm.
don't want to hear you complain. And so, getting that business coach or that therapist or having a CEO group where you can really just honest and open and tell them what you're worried about, it has to be done because, at the end of the day, it's going to be really, really lonely, especially if you have, a large staff. Is that the minute, and I learned this the hard way, like, you say a couple things on a staff meeting, like, "Hey, we're just thinking about making some changes and restructuring some things," and all of a sudden they're like, "All right, who's getting let go?"
Yeah, yeah.
And so they listen to every word that you say, and they watch every move, and they're there for you. And so I think, yeah, I don't know what I would do. It's been really nice having her as a business owner because before she was in ortho surgery and she was still my sounding board, right? But now I can say things and she gets it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why having that other person that's in a business or a CEO group where you guys can have confidential conversations is, one of the best things that you probably could do for your business.
Mm. What is one of the key, I guess, areas of the book, The Lonely CEO, that's come up for you as you're writing it, that's kind of maybe surprised you in a way that the topic has expanded?
Yeah, there's a lot of things in there, and I didn't think, for that beginning part is more about like how I was feeling and kind of how I was down and how I was figuring that out. And then it kind of walks, through that piece of how I got out of it. But then what was really cool is as we're kind of going through the chapters, we started to put things in there about marketing and about sales and how to do sales and, how to organize and create your core values. And then for me, that was, really, really cool because I didn't think that that would be an entire chapter on core values, right? Or an entire
Mm.
chapter on sales. And then also for me, it was like when we were done and then the editor sent it back, I was like, man, this guy sounds smart. And I was like, man,
Funny about that, right?
maybe, yeah, yeah. And that was the same thing with Esther and and a couple other people that are helping me do some courses. This one guy that's helping me with I'm creating a course based on that. And when I first met him, I told him my story and told him who I was and what I had done, and it was just like, whatever, this has all been easy, blah, 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 no big deal. And he was like, yeah, and then he was talking, he's like, yeah, we should write something like, here I run a successful 7-figure business and I almost all shut it down, but here's what I did. And I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to talk to that guy and love to see his stuff. And he was like, no, dude, I'm talking about you. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, like, I think for me, it's been whether anybody buys the book or not, I think for me, it's been a really good exercise. It's kind of like journaling and it's kind of like getting everything out there in this 10, 15 chapter book that, I must know something.
Mm.
Because it's just not gonna, it's not gonna be the editor would tell me that it's not very good, and maybe not because I'm paying them, but I think for me, expanding on not just that mindset piece and how to get out of imposter syndrome, but then the tactics like calendar schedule and morning routines and those kind of things grew into something a lot bigger. Like I never thought they would be chapters on their own. So that was really cool. That's been a great experience for me.
I love that so much. Well, I can tell you, I will definitely be buying the book. I think it sounds fabulous. It definitely is speaking to me. The Lonely CEO is something that I absolutely resonate with. For anyone else that's listening that would like to connect with you so that they can be notified when the book comes out, but also to see all of the other things that you have to offer, how can they do that?
Yeah, really easy, Sam. It's briantown.io. So BRIAN town, TOWN.io. And that's got every link you could need. My calendar access is there too. So love to talk to anyone and entrepreneurs. If you just want to get on a call, we can cry together. That's fine too.
Love it, love it. And of course, all those links. That one link will be below wherever you're listening now. Brian, thanks so much for coming on the show and just really opening up and having a deep and honest conversation about what it's like being at the top. I really appreciate it. And it's just it's adding so much value to people just to say, hey, we're all here. This is the way we're all doing it. And to also go, you know what? We do know some stuff. We get caught in our heads saying we're making it up as we go along, but we do know some stuff and we're all here to do some great things in our lives. So thank you so much for opening that conversation up.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, it's pure madness. So glad to be on here and see you again, Sam.